Hello, my name is Brian Thornton. Thank you for tuning into this webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about the new red flag rule that amends the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act and what that means for your business. The red flag rule is a joint rule issued by several different agencies, the OCC, the FDIC, the OTS, the NCUA, and the FTC. And basically, this rule amends the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act of 2003, better known as the FACT Act, and specifically issues guidelines for implementing Sections 114 and 315 of the FACT Act. First, as I said earlier, you have to have a written information security program in place. Second, that program has to have controls that prevent and mitigate the risks associated with identity theft. Third, the program must be administered by a board of directors or a member of senior management. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but a key success indicator in any information security program is that a member of senior management has to drive. The program has to have a compliance report delivered on at least an annual basis, and it can't just be a binder on a shelf. It has to be updated periodically. It has to be a living document. The program must contain an instant response capability, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and why that is so important and how, whereas that seems like a reactive control, it actually provides a very important aspect of a proactive program. And then finally, a big requirement, as a covered entity, you must ensure that your vendors, your service providers, and your other third-party providers are also compliant. And we'll talk about that. So let's look at each of these requirements in a little bit of detail for a few minutes. The first, as I said earlier, is that the red flag rule requires that you have a written information security program. Why is this? Basically, by doing so, it shows that an organization has undertaken a formal process to address their risks. Second, as I said earlier, the law requires controls to prevent and mitigate the risks associated with identity theft. Well, we would say that any information security program should be risk-based. That is, you can't just look and say, what is my competitor doing? What is a good company out there doing? No, your program has to be specific to you. You have to look at your individual risks and figure out ways that are appropriate for you to address those. If you're in the mortgage space, your risks are a little bit different than those in the automotive space or healthcare, and each of your programs has to be a bit unique, but at the same time, every program has to include a combination of controls. And a common misconception in information security is that I say the word information security and you think, oh, well, that's IT stuff, that's my technical stuff, it's my firewall, it's my router, it's wireless stuff. Well, in reality, information security is much broader than that. Your program has to be holistic, and that's a word I'm going to use a lot today. Your program has to include a combination of administrative controls, like policy and procedure or management support, operational controls, like the things that you do when you hire or you terminate an employee, and technical controls as well, like the way you administer your firewalls or wireless routers or the way that you handle data. And so to really be effective, your program has to consider each of those controls. The third requirement of the red flag rule is dealing with administration. And it says that the program has to be administered by either a board of directors or, recognizing that many small and medium-sized companies don't have a board of directors, alternately a member of senior management. Why is this? It's, as I said earlier, that a key success indicator in any information security program is that senior management is actively involved. And I'll say this, senior management is ultimately the one responsible for safeguarding the organization's information. From a legal perspective and a fiduciary perspective, it is senior management who is on the hook. As that's the case, it makes sense that they be in the driver's seat. And I can tell you from involvement with literally hundreds of companies and helping them develop information security programs that from the very smallest to the very largest, the ones that are successful overwhelmingly have senior management involved. Moving on, the fourth requirement is that a compliance report has to be delivered on at least an annual basis. And really, this is intended to show some accountability. The fifth requirement is that the program is updated on a regular basis. Basically, to put it bluntly, criminals evolve. Your business has to evolve too. An effective information security program today does not look like an effective information security program 3 years ago or 5 years ago. If your program is just a binder sitting on a shelf, something that you've done to be officially compliant with the law, well, it's not really protecting your organization. And so your program has to evolve over time. To use a military example, there's a reason that the military goes out and trains in the worst conditions possible in the dark of night and in the rain. That is so when something actually happens, they will be prepared to respond. To remain effective, your organization must train and retrain your employees. Your employees will not actually behave how you think they would behave. This is true across the board, and I can tell you from literally hundreds of cases. You have to teach your employees how you expect them to act, and updating your program on a regular basis gives you a convenient opportunity to revisit this with your employees. The next requirement of the program is actually one that, as I said earlier, you might not think belongs in a proactive program, as it is a reactive control, but it is very, very important in its instant response. The difference between the best programs and the rest is that the best expect incidents to occur and are prepared to respond. And being prepared reduces your response time. It will reduce your financial losses, which you would think are important, but as we work with our clients, we actually find that overwhelmingly, after people are done responding to events, they actually say that while the financial losses hurt, what actually did the most damage to their organization was the damage to their brand integrity and their reputation. It was that breach of trust that caused a lessening of respect amongst their customers. And so by being prepared to respond, you can stand in front of the cameras, in front of your customers, in front of the most important people in your town, and say, we knew this could happen. We took the steps that we needed to prevent it from happening, and we took reasonable measures to safeguard our information, but we knew that this was always a possibility, and as such, we were prepared to respond, and here's what we're going to do. That translates much differently than no comment. The last piece of the program is what we call vendor integrity, and it's the requirement that as a covered entity, you not only have to be compliant, but so do your vendors, your suppliers, and any third party or related party that you might do business with. And the reason for that is this, and that is many programs out there don't address third party controls, and when they get caught by a breach, it's actually not the company at all that's had the breach, it's some third party provider. Let's look at it like this. Let's say that this morning on the way to work, you stopped by your favorite coffee shop and you bought a coffee. You paid for that with your check card, and this afternoon or this evening, that coffee shop is going to batch that transaction to some merchant provider to charge your bank account. They don't actually clear that transaction themselves. They don't have that capability. And so let's say now that that merchant provider actually has a data breach and loses your check card number. Well, you get a letter in the mail that says, we're very sorry, we lost your information and here's what you can do about it. But as a consumer, the problem is you didn't do business with that merchant provider, you did business with a coffee shop. And so while the third party caused the breach and is responsible for the breach, it's the coffee shop that suffers the damage to their brand integrity and their reputation and is hurt by their customers. And so while you can have great controls, if the people you do business with don't have that same level of respect for data, and if they don't have appropriate controls in place as well, then you may as well not have controls because you are giving your information to somebody who just doesn't care.